Period. Oh God. Oh God. Like, why you on my Twitter? Why you on my Facebook? Why you on my Tumblr?
Why you DMing me? Sis, why you tagging me in photos? You don't even fuck with me. Let me know. Let me know.
Yes, sis.
Kiyomi, get your ass in here.
Kiyomi, get your ass in here.
Come on, girl.
I'm like, bitch, that's my cookie. That's my juice, okay? Carry on. Thank you, next. That's what this baby picture says.
It's a gorgeous day to be a baddie out here at David Urban. Yes, I started from the bottom, now we here. Look at this, y'all. This is crazy. No, because it's kind of giving Mona Lisa. It's kind of giving, woo!
I'm going to say that Lana is the most body tea. I'm going to say...
Yes, I love that one.
Yes. I'm going to say that Lexi is the most...
Who that?
마음에 안 들어.
Who that?
자꾸 우리 주위 생일을 마음에 안 들어.
Who that?
You see this shit? You see this Home Alone 2 Lost in New York shit? It's a great system, motherfucker.
And a lot of people have been saying I'm the GOAT. They don't mean greatest of all time, they mean that one from Narnia. I've seen a lot of kids running around dressed as me for Halloween, too, and I just want to say, like, cut it out, because my culture is not a costume.
You are so corny.
Red? Yo, the Beyonce was like, what? And I was like, later on. What up, dog? And, dog? Keeping it real.
You're thinking way too deep into it.
I'm saying, but that's the powers that we be going through, man. This shit real out here, you feel me?
Next, you see how boring they are?
Trigger warning, this video contains images of blackface, discussions of racial trauma, examples of cultural mockery and stereotyping, references to slurs, discussions of discrimination and systemic racism, mentions of police violence, and racial profiling. Viewer discretion is advised. I believe these topics are necessary to approach head on, but please take care of your mental health and step away if you need to. If you hit a wrong note, it's the next note you play that determines if it's good or bad. Miles Davis. While the famous trumpeter was clearly talking about music, this applies to everything, especially our discussion today. The US continues to hit the wrong note when it comes to addressing its deeply shameful and racist past. Instead of addressing anything and changing its tune to move towards true understanding and accountability that would lead to real change, this country is stuck playing the same one-note flat tune and hoping that we all just cover our ears. And unfortunately, some of us will, but I hope more of us won't. I remember being a kid and hearing about YouTube and immediately wanting to find out who the biggest creators were that everybody was talking about. The one name that kept popping up was Shane Dawson. I'll never forget the visceral shock I felt seeing him in full blackface, using slur after slur and racial stereotypes, and thinking, this must be a mistake. This can't be the #1 YouTuber that everybody is propping up as peak comedy. But there was no mistake. A little over a decade ago, it was still profitable and normal to do blackface on a large scale. And the craziest part is that Shane Dawson's cataclysmic cancellation had absolutely nothing to do with his racist actions. He was able to rebrand again and again, and his racism was never the biggest issue people had with him. It was merely an afterthought. Since then, him and creators like Jenna Marbles have given effective apologies that showed a clear understanding of the problem and the first steps toward accountability. Shane even said in his apology that he couldn't imagine being a black person and seeing hundreds of thousands of people praise a man for doing blackface.
Blackface was something that I did a lot. Like, I did it a lot on my channel, and there's no excuse for it. There's literally no excuse. I made a video 6 years ago talking about it, and I gave excuses, and I knew it was wrong, and I knew I would never wanted to do it again, but I didn't do the work. I didn't actually look into the history of it, and why it's so wrong, and why people were so upset, because my excuse, I was just being funny. I love black people. I'm not racist. I was trying to be funny. All of that is stupid and wrong, and I put that onto the internet as an adult, and that is insane. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry to anybody that saw that and that also saw that people were lifting me up and were saying, you're so funny, Shane. Oh my God, you're so funny. Like, I can't even put myself in that head. I can't even imagine what it would be like to be black and to see this white fucking guy do blackface. And the whole internet at that time being like, LOL, that's insane. And I am so sorry. I don't know how to even fully apologize because it seems like something that is irredeemable, or I don't know the right word, but it's something that I shouldn't even be able to get out of. I should lose everything for that. I don't have hate in my heart for anyone, but it doesn't make up for the fact that I made jokes about everyone. And I started seeing black people who I know, who I'm friends with, who I've known for a long time. I'm seeing them openly talking about on their Instagram or Twitter the years of anger they've had about racist jokes, about blackface, about, microaggressions, everything that they've gone through. And I felt like the biggest piece of shit in the entire world. I felt awful. And the biggest problem with me doing that and posting it on the internet was it made young people at the time who were watching me think it was okay. And that's the craziest part. It's like I've had people tell me, well, I used to watch your videos when I was a kid, and yeah, I never saw anything wrong with that. And that is scary because it made me realize, oh my God, I have been a part of such a huge problem and I have just been avoiding it. And that's wrong. So I'm so sorry. I'm sorry that I added to the normalization of blackface or the normalization of saying the N-word. That's another thing. I mean, and my justification at the time for that was, oh, it was, you know, I was playing a character and it was in comedy and my black friend was there and, you know, that makes it okay. No, it's not okay. And it's not a funny word, especially for a white person to say. Me as a white person wearing a wig and playing a character and doing stereotypes and then saying the N-word is something that I should have probably lost my career for at the time. And there's no amount of apologizing that can take it away and take away the impact it had and take away the amount of people that have been hurt by that or have felt like I was just, oh, another white guy who can get away with everything. When I really looked into the history of blackface, I looked into it years ago and it obviously disgusted me, made me sick, I felt awful. But even at that time, I still was being ignorant and I was saying in my head, well, but I didn't do that. You know, I was playing Wendy Williams or I was playing a character. That justification, that is wrong. I mean, I've watched so many videos on the history of blackface and how it was created to make fun of black people, to make them feel less than. And the fact that I, in some way, was a part of that, like the fact that the word blackface now will forever be attached to me, that's the level at which I have been lately. Just feeling very awful about myself, about what I did, about the jokes I've made, about the videos I've made, and wanting to disassociate from that person.
I'm sure that there were black people at the time pointing out how disgusting and racist this was, feeling the same visceral shock that I did as a child. But these people probably went ignored, told, it's just comedy, it's dark and edgy. Is it really that bad if he has a black friend laughing alongside him? This is just how comedy evolves. So I have to ask, is it really going to take looking back in 5 to 10 years and seeing tearful apologies for the blatant appropriation of AAVE and Blaccents for y'all to think maybe black people are actually hurt by this behavior despite me being entertained by it? Maybe it's not worth it, and I should listen to them when they say it's not okay, instead of fighting tooth and nail for my right to offend them. Yeah, no, it was never going to be that simple. The question isn't whether we'll eventually recognize today's Blaccents as problematic. We will. The question is how many more decades of harm will we allow before we decide to listen to black voices the first time? Every few years when I hear about a new comedic influencer, I'm inevitably exposed to a new version of this appropriation of blackness that is quirky or trendy. It was Shane Dawson with his Shanae character on YouTube, Shane and Heath's hood skits on Vine.
Thank you, eHarmony, for finding me my baby daddy who birthed me my beautiful baby. Tyreek, my baby, bitch! Ooh.
Enya and Drew and Friends, ghetto personas.
I ain't trying to hit you, you coming at me, bitch.
You can hit me, I got more man in me than you got in you.
And now Alex Consani's Model of the Year worthy Blaccent.
Okay, y'all, we're backstage at the BS with the TS. You know what the fuck is good. Yes, transsexuals rise. All I'm gonna say is it's a Jersey remix summer.
Yet a lot of people want to comment that I'm exaggerating by saying AAVE and Blaccents are just the next progression of this vicious cycle that doesn't affect y'all, but continues to harm people that look like me. In my video on white feminism and the white savior rebrand, I mentioned the evolution of blackface and minstrelsy into digital blackface today, and I got some strong but mixed reactions. A lot of people felt seen when I pointed out the normalization of the Blaccent and how it's made brands for white influencers like Alex Consani, but there were also a lot of defenders of appropriation and people downplaying it and calling me extreme and disingenuous for making such a comparison. I think it's very telling how people in the US will vehemently deny this country's racist past and present, while simultaneously remaining willfully uneducated on it. Rather than considering that they might not know everything, they assume anyone more educated on the subject might be lying or exaggerating. This instinctual anti-intellectualism isn't accidental. It's by design. What did Liam Neeson say in Atlanta?
Hold on. Wait. But then you learn that you shouldn't say shit like that?
Aye. But I also learned that the best and worst part about being white is you don't have to learn anything if you don't want to. Take it easy, paper boy.
In today's video, I'm going to trace the evolution from blackface minstrelsy to today's digital appropriation of blackness, showing how the costume has changed, but the performance remains disturbingly similar. tea, or how y'all would say it, tea. Welcome or welcome back to Lonnie's Lens, my little corner of the internet where I talk about film, TV, pop culture, and literally whatever else is on my mind. Today, by popular demand, we are going to be talking about Alex Consani, Blaccents, Sinners, and more broadly, the evolution of the culture vulture. But first, I have to say thank you for 30,000 subscribers. Oh my gosh. 30,000 was my goal for the year. I started the year with 2,500, I think, and it's only May. So what the hell am I supposed to do now? Like, what do I do, you know? But I'm so excited and I'm so thankful for all of your support. But I guess the new goal is 50K? Let's say that. But on a more serious note, I always put the sources and mentions in my video in the description. But for this video, I really want to stress that each of you really engage with one of those materials in its entirety. There is absolutely no way that I'm going to be able to convey the history of cultural appropriation or blackface or minstrelsy in this video. I tried I tried desperately, but it's impossible. There's so many historians, writers doing great work to describe and educate people on this phenomenon. I got so many comments on my white feminism video saying thank you for being a resource, and I just want to make sure that my YouTube videos are a launching pad for your unlearning and never a final stop. On the lighter side, I highly recommend Intellectual Media's video on the history of Black parties. She goes in depth on the different eras of Black parties, and that was the first time I'd ever heard about a juke joint when I watched the video like a year ago. And so going into Sinners, I already had an idea of what a juke joint was, which was so cool and rewarding. So I highly recommend that. She has so many great videos on Black history in general, so go check her out. And on the heavier side, I really recommend the Backstory podcast, specifically their episode titled The Faces of Racism, A History of Blackface and Minstrelsy in American Culture. It really provided the foundation of a lot of the information I'm going to be talking about today, so can't recommend it enough, but there's going to be so many mentions and sources in the description, so please check them out. I'm also shamelessly plugging my Venmo and my Patreon for this video. Just from reading the script, I know that this is going to be my best video so far. I put so much work into it, and I'm very proud of it, but it was also intensely traumatic and stressful to see decades and decades of videos and photos of people putting on blackface to resemble the people that look like me and my family, you know, and that's really hard. So in the name of education and in the name of, you know, trying to spread awareness, I thought it was really important, but it's awful. I'm gonna have to read this because I don't want to get too emotional, but seeing people who look like me be dehumanized and gaslit for centuries and receiving uncritical justifications for it over and over was almost unbearable, and I can only imagine the ones I'll get under this video. So please consider supporting me and showing that support monetarily. I really appreciate it. If not, a like, comment, share, and subscribe is also greatly appreciated. Do whatever you can. But if you'd like to keep up with me outside of YouTube, you can follow me on Instagram or Letterboxd to see what I've been watching lately. As per usual, everything will be linked down below in the description. So now, without further ado, let's get into the video. So we're gonna start the video off with me addressing a lot of the defenses of appropriation, which is wild to even say, and some of the fallacies that go along with them. I had some comments of people genuinely asking, like, what is the line with using AAVE? And people ask, like, is it really that bad if I use one word, if I just say period or cis? Like, I just want to know. In response, I have one question. Why do you need to say these words? Why is it such a sacrifice to stop using the words that you learned on your For You page 2 months ago? You had no idea what they were, and now you're acting like they're vital to your life source or something. I don't understand. Like, it's such a sacrifice to stop saying period. Like, it's gonna take some work, but that's the point. Like, in my peak white feminism video, the main thing that I didn't say in that video that I wish I'd really focused on was Chapel saying that because it's hard, it's impossible. And it's just weird to me that, do they think it's supposed to be easy? If it was easy, do you think we'd be where we are? Like, do you think maybe they decided to make it hard on purpose so that the people that weren't willing to put in the work would tap out and leave the rest of us high and dry? Do you think maybe that's how the system works? In real life, if you're doing something that seems innocuous to you and you don't really see the problem with it, and somebody politely asks you or says, hey, do you mind not doing that? Like, it really bothers me. Are you gonna say, well, why can't I? Or are you just gonna stop the behavior? My bestie Paula, pause, she'll get that. My bestie Paula had a really good analogy, and she likened it to a kid who has like all of these toys. Their parents can buy them whatever toy they want, and they have like 50 different toys to choose from, and they have a friend who only has one toy, and their parents worked so hard to get them that toy, and they're really appreciative of it, and they really love this toy. The kid with all the other toys sees the kid with one toy and just desperately wants that toy so badly, and their parents, all the adults, are telling them, hey, like, you have all these toys, was. Like, why do you want that one? And they throw a hissy fit and they're just like, why can't I? Like, why can't I have this one toy? I have everything else, but why can't I have that toy? And that image is all I have in my head when I hear people say like, well, why can't I? Trust me, you won't suffer any major loss from not using AAVE. Unless you've built your entire brand and internet persona off of it, then maybe there's something at stake. But the other thing is, like, I get it's fun, but there's a lot of things that are fun that you just don't do. And it's only so hard and so difficult for people to understand when it's something that belongs to Black people. We as a society know it's unacceptable to mock an Asian person's accent, to slant your eyes, to resemble an Asian person. But when it comes to mocking Black people and the way that some of us speak, it's just how our generation talks. This shows just how deeply embedded anti-Blackness is, not only in the US, but globally. And people were trying to say, it's okay if we're not making a mockery of y'all. It's okay if we're not doing that, if we're just saying it, but we're not making a mockery. And I think the best example is that Brittany Broski clip of her quoting Nicki Minaj in her live saying, big boobs, child, anyways. Because the funny part of that is her saying big boobs, child, okay, anyways, and moving on. But the way Brittany impersonated her was by saying, big boobs, child, anyway. Why do we need the hand gesture? We need the eye. Is that not mockery? Because it really just highlights what y'all think is funny. What is so funny about that clip? Because I think it's her saying big boobs and then moving on. But y'all think it's big boobs and doing all the stuff that Nicki did not do in that clip.
Big boobs? What? Child. Anyway, so...
This shows what people really find funny about that moment. The way a Black woman expresses herself. Or actually, more so the perceived way a Black woman expresses herself. Adding all these mannerisms, she didn't do that. But why do you think when they reenact it, they do that? There's this weird impulse to minimize and invalidate Black people's concerns and rationalize your behavior. We all do things that are bad on occasion, but you don't get to do the bad thing and then explain to the people that you're harming that it's actually not that bad, just so you don't have to feel bad about it. That's what a lot of these comments are. Excuses and ways to avoid reflecting or changing your behavior. And if you're looking for those excuses from me, you're clearly at the wrong channel. I'd suggest asking a Black conservative, specifically featured in a Jubilee or Cut video, to get the answers that you're looking for. Or if you can't find one of them, just stop by your local PWI, they got you. But know that just because a Black person lets you do something doesn't mean that it's okay. Especially when Black people have no real power over you and historically have had to defer to non-Black people to make them feel comfortable in order to survive themselves. You're not wondering if it's bad because of how it harms others. You're wondering if it's bad because it makes you look and feel bad. And those are two completely different things that you're gonna have to parse out. It's uncomfortable, I know. The next defense is that it's just Gen Z slang and internet culture. I got this comment on my peak white feminism video, and it puts it so simply and perfectly. The AAVE topic is really frustrating because I think it's one of the easiest ways to understand how racism influences everything and how everyone participates in it, whether it's voluntary or involuntary. English is my third language, and as a teen, I spent a lot of time in English-speaking internet spaces. I naturally picked up on AAVE thinking it's universal slang. Eventually, I learned about AAVE, how and why it developed, and how white people keep finding ways to appropriate Black culture. So to be defensive and claiming it's Gen Z language is beyond me. It's so easy to say, oh, I didn't know about that. Thanks for telling me. I'll be more mindful about it and tell my peers about it too. Contrast this to the comments in defense of appropriation. Saying Gen Z slang is modern day blackface is crazy. A bunch of Gen Z slang comes from Black people because we love y'all, and I don't see what's wrong with us becoming more like each other and using each other's slang. I'm gonna stop right there because yeah, but a couple things. Y'all love us, but refuse to listen to us when we tell you directly that your behavior is offensive and harmful. That's not love. It's not appreciation. It's appropriation and gaslighting under the guise of love and acceptance. Okay, cornbread, we'd all just have to be kind to one another. Right? I've found that it's always the people who have never created something of their own that see no problem with other people taking things that they didn't create. You wouldn't understand the hard work and meeting that went into it, so of course it wouldn't seem like a big deal to you. And lastly, we are not becoming more like each other. This is not a mutual exchange. This is a continuation of the appropriation and colonization of marginalized people's cultures.
Seriously, I'm gonna keep saying this until I die. American culture is Black American culture. It just gets filtered out and watered down and whitewashed until they can give credit to a white guy. Jazz, country, rock and roll, rap, all Black American creation. And then you want to move to the protest side. Bro, not only did Black Lives Matter spark actual other things like Asian Lives Matter and Queer Lives Matter and Trans Lives Matter, but on the flip side, when racist assholes were trying to say, well, Blue Lives Matter, through humanity, what happened is it translated into less of a sarcastic thing and more into a genuine, like, support your nurses and firefighters and EMTs. So even the people who might be the most discriminatory, they gotta think of Black American for their own fucking views.
Another defense is the I naturally speak this way because of where I grew up. I'll never forget this tweet of a Black woman saying that she was raised by her stepdad and he had a heavy Vietnamese accent, and somehow she never picked up on that accent, despite living with him and being around him her entire life. Proximity doesn't automatically mean adoption unless there's some other motivation behind it.
No, but like I talk like this because I grew up around like a lot of Latinos, like, pero I'm American, pero my best friend's Puerto Rican, like, you know what I'm saying? I pick up things because I grew up around like a lot of Latinos. So like when people say like, why do you talk like that? Like, why are you trying to like act like you're Latino and stuff like that? It's like, okay, like I just pick up things from, you know, like just my surroundings and like, I don't know, pero I'm not acting.
A lot of people aren't in community with Black people, and more specifically, Black people from these subgroups like the ballroom scene. Most of the time, the one Black person y'all know speaks like me. And I have even had to check myself, even though I am a Black queer person, and understand that I am not in the ballroom scene, and using their language and using their terms in my everyday life and taking them away from their original context is weird behavior, and I don't need to be doing it. There are so many different dialects of AAVE that change geographically and based on the community. The confusion comes when people take bits and pieces of this dialect with its own grammatical rules and vocabulary and make it this jumbled mess of nonsense. It's like taking random words of Spanish, French, Italian, and claiming that you're speaking European. It reveals a fundamental lack of respect and understanding of the language. There is, however, an important distinction to make. Some immigrants and non-native English speakers may develop speech patterns similar to AAVE because they learned English primarily through Black media or in predominantly Black spaces. A great example is comedian Jimmy O. Yang, and he has discussed how he learned English partly through watching BET, which influenced his speech patterns, and you can tell. But the key here is that he doesn't exaggerate these patterns for comedic effect or put on a Blaccent like Awkwafina. He is a comedian and he's very funny, but the humor doesn't come from how he talks. It comes from how he crafts his jokes and how he shares his perspective. Something that Awkwafina has yet to do. So this highlights the importance of nuance and context. There's a huge difference between naturally adopting speech patterns through genuine immersion in a community versus deliberately putting on a Blaccent as a performance or for profit that you can easily take off once you clock out. So the question isn't simply, are you using AAVE, but rather, are you exaggerating or performing Blackness? Are you using it selectively for entertainment or profit? Can you drop it when it's convenient, while Black people cannot escape the same consequences of their Blackness? These distinctions help us move beyond the simple finger pointing of you're bad and you're doing the wrong thing, but help us understand the complex power dynamics at play when it comes to cultural appropriation. And the last defense I hear is that languages just naturally evolve. Suddenly, everybody in my comment section is well versed in the history of linguistics and got their degree and they know everything. They argue that languages naturally evolve and blend, so appropriating AAVE is just a part of this natural process. There's a crucial distinction between acknowledging that this has happened historically and concluding that, therefore, this should keep happening. The latter statement requires no reflection or accountability, while the former invites us to learn from the past. Languages embody nuance, history, and deep insights into a community's lived experience. It's so disheartening to hear people casually participate in whitewashing and stripping away the meaning of a dialect that emerged from my community's horrendous historical oppression, and then have the audacity to justify it with, this is just how language evolves, to avoid any self-reflection or sacrifice on their part. Countless indigenous languages have been completely eradicated through these supposedly natural processes. Using this argument to justify your Blaccent essentially says, well, cultural erasure has always happened, so why stop now? But just because something has happened historically, it doesn't make it inevitable, natural, or appropriate behavior for you to perpetuate. As societies evolve, we abandon harmful historical practices. We no longer believe that bloodletting cures disease. We don't consider women property. Most people agree that Blackface is wrong. So why is appropriating AAVE where you draw the line on progress? Because it's fun? You don't think the people attending minstrel shows were having fun? What makes this particular form of appropriation so precious that you'll fight to defend it? And do you think it's much different from how people justified Blackface in the past? Now let's actually dive into the history of Blackface and minstrelsy in the US. People were particularly upset when I compared using AAVE incorrectly and having a Blaccent to blackface in minstrel shows, and this highlights non-black people's urge to gaslight and minimize anti-blackness in US history. Comedian Louis C.K., who is very problematic in his own right, has a surprisingly astute joke about this.
You can't take people's like historical context away from them. And everybody wants us to. Like, white people are always like, come on, it wasn't us. Like, they want black people to forget everything. Like, every year, white people add 100 years to how long ago slavery was. I've heard educated white people say slavery was 400 years ago. No, it very wasn't. It was 140 years ago. That's two 70-year-old ladies living and dying back to back. That's how recently you could buy a guy. And it's not like slavery ended and then everything has been amazing. Like, it's just, Glenn, that's oh yeah.
And it's true, blackface and minstrelsy and slavery are not distant practices. They're not ancient history like most people would like you to believe. Look at these images from the 1950s and 60s with people protesting against integration and bullying children like Ruby Bridges. What truly separates us from these people? They weren't supervillains who were nothing like us just because we were born a few decades later. These people raised children, and those children grew up and raised us. These attitudes, behaviors, and practices didn't just disappear into thin air because we'd like to think they did. So what were minstrel shows actually like? These shows mostly consisted of performers in blackface. Blackface was the practice of non-black performers darkening their skin with burnt cork or shoe polish to caricature and mock black people. The tradition reached its peak between 1850 and 1870. However, although the form gradually disappeared from professional theaters, its influence endured in vaudeville, radio, television, and the motion picture and music industries of the 20th and 21st centuries. Many people don't realize how popular in the mainstream blackface was. Professional blackface shows were the #1 form of entertainment in the 19th century in New York City. They created blackface celebrities and a whole entertainment industry around blackface. The Ku Klux Klan would use blackface to disorient their victims during raids, making them temporarily think that they were seeing black people and were safe. And this is one of the most sinister applications and one that will continue to haunt me forever. Blackface performances were even used for KKK recruitment, even in settings such as school performances. These weren't just isolated incidents, they were highly profitable events. College fundraisers during the Reconstruction era would put on blackface shows, raising thousands of dollars. Theater companies published their own DIY blackface guides, so what began as a passive consumption in theaters moved into people's homes through radio, then TV, and now YouTube, streaming, and social media. The difference now is that real black people are the subjects of this mockery, not just white performers in makeup.
One thing that I think it's really important to understand is blackface has been intimately linked to every major form of American culture, which is why someone like Megyn Kelly thinks that this is innocuous. So for example, the first major film, Birth of a Nation, silent film, the first talkie, The Jazz Singer, a blackface film, the first cartoon with synchronized sounds, Steamboat Willie, Mickey Mouse. All of that is happening to Stephen Foster songs and pretty horrific references to minstrelsy. And so we see over and over and over again that advancements in American culture and technology are linked to blackface in a way that makes it celebrated. And so by the time you get to someone like Megyn Kelly, you might have somebody whose great-grandparents, grandparents, and parents were all raised to believe that this is an accurate representation of African-American life, and that by donning blackface, you are appreciating someone. She talked about Diana Ross. But what I want to say here is there is a massive difference between watching something and consuming it passively and physically painting your face, learning how to walk stereotypically, speaking in dialect, and imitating African Americans in a way that is very offensive.
And people don't understand that black people also participated in blackface shows and minstrelsy, because for a lot of them, it was the only way to make it in show business and be a performer. The impact of minstrelsy went far deeper than just the shows themselves. A lot of the popular songs at the time that people know even now originated in minstrel shows. Camptown Races and Oh Susanna had overtly racist lyrics, often containing the N slur. Common jokes like, "Why did the chicken cross the road?" have origins in minstrel humor. One of the main events of the minstrel show was a segment called the stump speech, where a performer would mimic and exaggerate black dialect, deliberately mispronounce words, use the words incorrectly, and present black people as unintelligent and incapable of proper speech. Sound familiar? This is the direct historical connection to modern-day Blaccents. I'll say it again. Stump speeches included mimicking and exaggerating black dialect, deliberately mispronouncing words, incorrect word usage, presenting black people as incapable of proper speech. As blackface became less acceptable visually, Eventually, it evolved to focus on vocal impersonation. I actually mentioned this in my Abbott Elementary video that you guys should check out, but Amos and Andy was the first ever Black sitcom, and it had its roots in minstrel shows and mocking Black dialect. Amos and Andy began as a radio show with white actors mimicking Black speech in the 1920s. They occasionally did in-person shows with Blackface, but the main focus was the vocal impersonation and trying to sound Black. The show transitioned to television with actual Black actors, but maintained the same stereotypes. The show aired in the 1950s. This demonstrates how mockery of Black speech continued even after the visual element of Blackface became unacceptable. People still do it today. So how does this connect to today? When you use a Blaccent or appropriate AAVE, you're not participating in some new internet trend. You're not just using Gen Z slang. You're continuing a specific tradition of mockery that has deep roots in American racism. You're engaging in a practice that is directly descended from minstrel shows, just without the Black face paint. The mockery of Black speech patterns wasn't just incidental to minstrelsy. It was fundamental to it. And that's exactly what continues today, when non-Black people put on Blaccents for entertainment, comedy, or to seem cool and relatable online. I just want to say this. The entire point of minstrelsy and Blackface is to appropriate the likeness of a Black person. And that includes not only their visual aspects, but how we speak, how we communicate, how we walk, how we talk.
Hi, Benji here, and I'm going to explain what digital blackface is. Digital blackface is when non-Black people use images or emojis of Black people to express emotion online, often extreme ones like anger or disbelief. Sometimes images are edited to indicate Blackness for this purpose. The intent may be innocent, but digital blackface, like the original use of blackface, exploits Blackness through media for entertainment. The overuse of these images also reinforces negative stereotypes that drive racial discrimination. We can use images of people that are a different race. It's okay to enjoy popular culture. We should just be conscious of the impact the media that we share online may have on communities with less privilege. For example, if you find you always use images of Black women to express sass, consider the negative stereotypes you're reinforcing and how this might reflect your own unconscious biases, and try a different image next time. Hope that helps. Bye.
Quoted in the article What's Digital Blackface and Why Is It Wrong When White People Use It, Lauren Michelle Jackson says, "Digital blackface does not describe intent, but an act. The act of inhabiting a Black persona. Employing digital technology to co-opt a perceived cachet of Black cool involves play-acting Blackness in a minstrel-like tradition. No matter how brief the performance or playful the intent, summoning Black images to play types means pirouetting on over 150 years of American blackface tradition. African American vernacular English isn't just slang, it's a legitimate dialect with consistent grammatical rules, syntax, and vocabulary that developed from the complex history of African Americans in this country. It emerged from the linguistic patterns of enslaved Americans who were forbidden from speaking their native languages and forced to learn English under brutal conditions." Again, to quote Kara McAndrews, "In the past, AAVE was banned from school settings, belittled, and mocked by racists in America. Even today, people are told they are speaking ghetto or improper English. Racist cartoons and caricatures would be designed to mock Black people by using exaggerated blackface and racist stereotypes, depicting Black people as uneducated, lazy, animalistic creatures." With such a history of white people using AAVE for minstrel comedy, it's concerning to see how AAVE is being rebranded today. AAVE isn't broken English. The next time someone tries to correct AAVE as improper or incorrect, remember that white supremacy created a system that denied Black people education and then mocked them for how they spoke. The normalization of AAVE has reached unprecedented levels on platforms like TikTok. When you scroll through your For You page, I want you to take a mental note of how many sounds, songs, dances, phrases come directly from Black people. It's not 10%, it's not 25%. It's the majority of the content that is driving these platforms. What we're seeing is digital colonization, taking Black creatives' output, stripping it of its context, and redistributing it as internet culture or Gen Z slang. We see this with several Black creators creating phrases and sayings that go immensely viral and are co-opted by businesses and firms, and they see none of the return on that. They are not able to capitalize on it in any way, but all of us are just having a blast saying this and not thinking twice about where it comes from or who created it. It's like, did y'all not see Hidden Figures? Like, I haven't even seen that. Isn't that the whole message of the movie? Like, I don't know. The appropriation isn't just about using the individual words from AAVE. It's about taking seemingly normal moments of Black celebrities and normal people, expressing themselves and turning them into performative catchphrases. Let's look at everyone's favorite, well, yes, which comes from Tokyo Tony. I know most people are going to be like, oh, how is that an example? It's literally just, well, yes. Like, everybody says that. That's not AAVE. It's not specific to AAVE. And sure, but that's exactly the point. It's such a small statement, and it is funny if you look at the context of what she's saying it in and saying, well, yes, it is funny, but the way it's caught like fire and everybody says it now, there's clearly something about the way that Black people express and articulate themselves that non-Black people find so special, so exotic, so entertaining that it warrants constant imitation and appropriation. And if we're being honest, I think the word is envy. They're performing them. They're putting on a character. Does that sound familiar? It should, because remember the stump speeches I mentioned earlier, where white performers would mock Black dialect for laughs? When you film yourself using a Blaccent or imitating Black expressions with exaggerated gestures, you're essentially performing a digital stump speech. The tools have changed. TikTok instead of theatrical stages, subtle vocal shifts instead of Black face paint. But the fundamental activity remains the same. Non-Black people performing exaggerated Blackness for entertainment. In the 1800s, white audiences would pay to watch white performers mock Black speech patterns. Today, non-Black creators get paid in views, likes, and sponsorships for doing essentially the same thing. The most insidious part is that many young people have no idea that they're participating in this tradition. They think they're just having fun with internet slang or Gen Z language. That's how effectively white supremacy has obscured the origins of these practices while continuing to profit from them. Now that we've talked about the history of AAVE, minstrel shows, and how it's all interconnected, I want to go deeper and try to understand why non-Black people are so desperate to use Blaccents in AAVE, and have been throughout history. The most obvious reason is using it for comedic effect, but I also think there's a deep-seated sense of envy and a desire for connection that we're going to explore through some case studies. For the comedic aspect, I want us to reflect on why it's funny to mimic Black speech patterns. It's mockery.
You see this shit? You see this Home Alone 2 Lost in New York shit? It's a system, motherfucker.
I am like Elvis early. I'm like early Elvis. Yeah, a good performer. Yeah, that people like.
Who stole from Black people
to make their fame.
Now, is this an impression or just a racist caricature?
You do a lot of Black voices. I don't do a lot of Black voices. I do a lot of characters, and some of them are, African American or ethnic.
You know who else started out with impressions?
Who's that?
Hitler. I want to hear this stereotype.
This was a person. It's based on a real man.
When did you start doing voices? I remember you used to do them, right?
I always did voices.
Honestly, John can do anybody. He can do an impression of anyone if they were Black and not privileged. He can knock it out of the park. Do Dan Mintz right now. Dan Mintz was Black and had no money.
Dan Mintz.
You actually sound more natural and down to earth moving this character than your real stand-up.
I'm so much happier as that character than I am as myself.
When watching his own comedy special with two other comedians, John Mulaney jokingly said he feels so much happier as that character than I am as myself, after his peers called him out for repeatedly putting on a stereotypical Blaccent. It's a throwaway comment, but I think there's some truth to it. White people in the US, in their quest for assimilation and white supremacy, have lost their own cultural roots, and they feel that emptiness. Despite white supremacy being designed to benefit them, they're left without a culture. And in some ways, appropriation has become their culture.
Just glad we're having these conversations in this country, And they're not easy conversations to have. Like, I was talking to my friend, she's Puerto Rican. She was like, Rosie, white women have got to stop wearing hoop earrings. You guys are appropriating Latin culture. And I was like, all right, cool, I get it, Like, your people came up with this shit. But if you want me to get my own identity, my people came up with appropriation. Like, technically, I'm very in touch with my background. It's just hard to tell a white person to get their own identity. It's like telling a homeless person to get a job. It's like, where?
Cultural ties, despite all attempts to strip them of their identity. White people consistently try to appropriate Blackness and other marginalized cultures to feel connected to something authentic. But it always remains superficial because they're taking without understanding or respecting. They can't just coexist within the community. They have to take the pieces that they like and use them elsewhere to profit off of, like white supremacy promotes. Ryan Coogler demonstrated this dynamic in his latest film, Sinners, where Remick, a vampire from Ireland who has experienced his own oppression at the hands of white supremacy, becomes drawn to Sammy, a young obsessed with taking and possessing Sammy's essence for himself, not realizing he's doing to Sammy exactly what his— If you want more of my in-depth thoughts on Sinners, feel free to hop over to my Patreon and we can have a good time, we can have a good discussion about it. There were so many themes and so many aspects of it that I really wanted to discuss. So I will see you behind the paywall if you decide to join me. Thank you. I also saw a TikTok of someone pointing out how Remick was so KKK. He was so offended and he was like, I can't believe you would even think that. And I think that represents a lot of how white people try to distance themselves from the overtly proud racist people and like to think, oh, well, I'm not doing that, so I'm good. Like, why do you even see me as a threat? And then they go on to do what Remick did in the film. This is where many queer people like Alex Consani struggle. They've experienced oppression through the violence and transphobia that white supremacy promotes. They find comfort in queer spaces created, maintained, and fought for by Black queer people. But they go too far, appropriating things that aren't theirs, taking them outside of these communities, and making a mockery of them while simultaneously benefiting from them socially. And the thing that bothers me the most about Alex Consani is that people try to be like, oh, it's not a big deal, like, she's just having fun and all this, but she's deliberately building a brand as like, I'm just this dumb brat, and like, I'm just dumb. And so why do you need to speak like that to portray that you are dumb? Like, do we not see? And then it's always like, it's always a caricature, it's always larger than life, it's always this persona. That is obviously not how she acts in real life. But this is what gets millions of likes and attention. Why do we think that is? How do you guys think from the 19th century and blackface being the most popular form of entertainment that we've somehow grown so far away from that when we barely discuss the effects of anti-blackness and racism in this country? But we just magically have moved past that, despite this being the most effective way to get attention on TikTok. When Alex Consani won Model of the Year, she said,
I'm the first trans woman to win this award. But I can't accept this award without thanking those that came before me, and specifically the Black trans women that really fought for the space that I'm in today. Dominique Jackson, Connie Fleming, Aaron Rose Phillips, and countless more, you fought for the space that allowed me to flourish today, and I'm eternally grateful for that.
On the surface, this seems great. She's acknowledging the Black trans women that made this possible. But why is their existence relegated to a thank you speech? Why does she then go on to use a Blaccent and mock the way these very same women speak and profit off of it while they are lost to the sands of time?
It's really crazy. I'm still like coming to terms with the fact that I have this award in my hand, but like, it's so impactful and it's so meaningful, but I hope that it means something bigger than just me, because like, it's not about me, and like what I'm celebrated for within the industry is so centered around who I grew up around, which are like the Black women and the people of color who are trans, who are like marginalized and felt and meant to felt and important, but they're really the origin of my community, and I hope that that opens the conversation to them. Look at this, y'all. This is crazy.
This is why the as long as we give credit to Black people defense never made any sense to me. What does credit do exactly? A quick acknowledgement at the end of your thank you speech does not make up for the continued exploitation and mockery of the very same people you claim to honor. It's the ultimate form of disrespect. Editing Killenny again. I just realized when watching her acceptance speech that this is the first time I've heard her speak without the Blaccent, and of course it's when she's being honored on stage in front of a ton of industry professionals and wanting to be taken seriously. Then all of a sudden the Blaccent is nowhere to be found. But as soon as she's off stage, it's back in action. This is another example of how they know it is not appropriate and don't use it when they want to be taken seriously. But when they want to joke around and show that they're not serious, the Blaccent comes out. The other issue here is the lack of identity outside of this performance. Who is Alex Consani without the Blaccent? I'd guess she's a fiercely talented model who clearly loves to be the center of attention and make people laugh, and these are great qualities. But why does she feel the need to use a Blaccent as a crutch for comedy and attention? As Kara McAndrew notes in her article, Why Non-Black Creators Need to Stop Using AAVE on Social Media, placing the point of expression onto Black bodies not only perpetuates the harmful belief that Black people are more exaggerated in their words and actions, but it also absolves the user of putting effort into creating a unique or compelling persona. By using Blackness as a tool for profit and fame, non-Black celebrities capitalize upon Black creativity for their own gain. Wearing Blackness as a costume for material gain and refusing to credit where it's due, or return that profit back to Black spaces, furthers racial inequalities and promotes the minstrel idea that Blackness is a costume. Back to the double standard. This question has been on the tip of my tongue ever since I thought about making this video. Do you guys think if Anok Yai acted even in the slightest way like Alex Consani, that she would have the same success? If we're being brutally honest, she probably wouldn't even have a career, let alone be able to profit off of her personality and be upheld for her quirky demeanor. She would be considered unprofessional, ghetto, and inappropriate. Yet Alex gets Model of the Year. I'm not trying to discredit Alex's work as a model. I'm sure she's very talented. I'm not really well versed in the fashion world at all, but acting like there is no double standard or disparity in how she is perceived versus someone like Anok Yai guy is ridiculous, and we need to point it out and at least talk about it. Because all of the discourse I've seen is like, oh yeah, like Anoki, like she really deserved it last year, but Alex really deserves it this year. And it's like, y'all can't help but discredit and skim over injustice towards black people, and it's very telling. Again, back to Sinners, this is why people praise Ryan Coogler for not code switching, to show his pride in his upbringing despite the possibility of coming off as unpolished or unserious to mainstream audiences. Making the way black people speak inherently comical or unserious harms them when they need to do a job interview, and can't code switch or drop the Blaccent like a white person who is just putting it on for fun. Black people face real world consequences for the very language that others treat as a costume and as a trend. We're witnessing the treatment of blackness as a personality quirk, an aesthetic, a comedic flair, essentially a mask or costume that can be put on and removed at will. White people benefit from performing blackness while black people are punished simply for being themselves. We see this pattern repeated endlessly. Black people having restrictions put on their hair in schools and workplaces, while white people wear those same styles with no repercussions or are even praised and seen as edgy or starting a new trend. Alabama Barker is the perfect example of this privilege. As the daughter of Travis Baker, she's a wealthy Nepo baby who's currently trying on blackness, much like her family friends, the Kardashians before her. I found this video on Twitter that demonstrates exactly what I'm talking about.
Choose a player to ding dong ditch, but they have to kick the door hardest. Alright, so we should go do that, y'all.
In this neighborhood, bro, and then we get arrested, dog. Get arrested, dog, attempted burglary. Like, I ain't, you know, we black. It ain't gonna look good.
You're thinking way too deep into it.
I'm saying, but that's the powers that we be going through, man. It's real out here, you feel me?
Next, you see how boring they are?
No, we can do it. Let's do it.
In the clip, she made fun of her black friends for not wanting to play Ding Dong Ditch because they were afraid of being arrested. Based on how differently police treat black youth, she got an attitude and called them lame. For Alabama, blackness is a fun aesthetic, a phase, something she can put on and take off. The Blaccent, the style, the music, it's all a game to her. But for her black friends, the consequences of their blackness are real and potentially dangerous. They can't take their skin off, they can't change their voices and their dialect when the police show up. Alabama's inability to recognize this, to see that what's a costume for her is a lived reality for her friends, is the exact mindset that makes cultural appropriation so harmful. She wants the cool parts of blackness without any of the struggle or discrimination. She's basically the real life version of Cindy from the Boondocks.
We'll walk up to them and say hi, and they say what? And then we say, this is our block. Now you gonna get down or you gonna lay down? And if they be like, oh, I don't know, let me think about it. We put out the Roscoe and we be like, block out. And they be like, oh, you shot me.
Or I guess that was more Billie Eilish, right?
I feel like my favorite cartoon character honestly would be Cindy from the Boondocks. Cause that's like me. That's me. That's me if I just did all the things I thought about doing. If I didn't have good judgment, I think that's me. Who knows if I have good judgment though, low-key.
We can also see that this is a global phenomenon in practice with the K-pop group Kiss of Life and their recent live where they were celebrating one of the members' birthday and she wanted the theme to be hip-hop and they were just dressed in stereotypical like black outfits and using Blaccents and eating soul food for fun and using blackness as literal costumes. I can do a video on K-pop if y'all want. I've been a K-pop fan since 2014. I think, let's say 2014. So over a decade now, so it'll be a good video, but that's a whole other can of worms that I'm actually down to get into if y'all want. Let me know in the comments. I also wanted to touch on the lack of accountability and reflection when non-black creators are confronted about their digital blackface or appropriation of AAVE. There's a pattern of wanting to diminish their actions and refusing to acknowledge them as harmful in any way. Take Enya and Drew getting called out for using AAVE.
Oh, I was gonna say the in the pit joke, because I know someone's gonna be like, you act like that wasn't you a few years ago. Like, yeah, and like
what about it? Like, genuinely, what about it?
We've moved on.
Their response didn't show any reflection or acknowledgement. It was so dismissive and defensive. All right, it's editing Kaylani, and I just rewatched the Enya and Drew clip, and I realized that nobody was actually calling Enya or Drew out. Enya was making fun of the finna be in the pit girl and anticipated that people were gonna call her out for also using AAV incorrectly. And in my opinion, that's actually worse than if people were calling her out, because that means that she is aware that she used to misuse AAVE. And instead of reflecting on it and getting out in front of it and being like, yeah, that was really embarrassing and I'm sorry that we did that. Perfect opportunity there to take accountability and reflect. And she said, nah. Drew said, and what about it? Genuinely, what about it? Genuinely. They could simply say, yeah, that was kind of weird and bad of us, and I'm really embarrassed that I did that. that, and I don't think anybody should be using that language or doing that anymore. We learned from the mistake and we're wanting to do better. Instead, there's this attitude of why should we apologize? And this is because it's become so normal to ignore any of the harm done to Black people or think that they deserve any kind of acknowledgement or apology. If someone is truly changed and grown, it shouldn't take much for them to acknowledge how they were wrong in the past and apologize because they've evolved from those behaviors. But it's clear many of these creators haven't actually changed and don't recognize the problem, which is why they become so defensive when they get called out. Now let's talk about Jenna Marbles. I'm not a fan of Jenna Marbles, and I never really was. I've always been aware of her and I thought she was funny. I only watched her infamous apology video for the first time while doing research for this video, and I had no idea that she had done blackface until I watched it. And she upfront was like, yeah, I did blackface in this. Yes, I mocked Asian people. And it was so jarring to me as someone who didn't know anything about what she had done, but consistently heard people saying, Jenna's the only creator that was so unproblematic and didn't deserve to be canceled. I'd heard that so many times. I literally didn't think that she had done anything wrong because that's the sentiment that I would see. I thought she was just really seeing like the environment that was on YouTube and realizing like she had made mistakes in her past and she wasn't interested in benefiting from it anymore. But I didn't know those mistakes were blackface and mocking Asian people. I had no idea, because what the internet would like to have you think is that she did absolutely nothing wrong because they want her to come back and make videos again. This shows that most people literally do not care about racism or its effects in the slightest if it gets in the way of their entertainment. And I'm not bringing this up again to reopen the wound and shame Jenna. I think her apology was a great first step in terms of taking accountability, but I'm more so bringing it up to show the reaction from a lot of people, because it's literally that clip of the girl from Community saying that she can excuse racism, but she draws the line at other things.
I can excuse racism, but I draw the line at animal cruelty.
You can excuse racism, so what?
That's how a lot of people feel, like they're okay with racism as long as it doesn't affect them. The lack of accountability is part of a larger cultural pattern where racism, specifically anti-Black racism, is treated as a minor infraction rather than the deeply harmful force that it actually is. When creators appropriate Black culture for profit and then dismiss concerns with, and what about it, it shows how little value is placed on Black experiences and perspectives. The refusal to acknowledge any harm, coupled with audiences' willingness to forgive or ignore racist behavior, creates an environment where appropriation can continue unchecked. The message is very clear. Black pain is less important than white entertainment or profit. Real accountability would require not just apologies, but genuine reflection, change behavior, and a commitment to understanding the historical context and ongoing harm caused by these practices. Without this, we're just perpetuating the same cycles of appropriation and dismissal that have characterized America's relationship with Black culture for centuries, forever playing the wrong note. So now let's talk about some solutions. For the people that are using AAVE and Blaccents right now, just stop. That's the first solution. Just stop doing it. You don't need to do it. And going forward, if you're somebody who like has used it, I'm not trying to condemn you. And again, I have literally no power over you. I'm literally sitting in my bedroom, minding my business. So I have no power over you. I'm not going to be there to wave my finger at you and tell you need to stop. You literally can take the information from this video and decide what you're going to do with it. I cannot tell you to stop. But what I can suggest that you do is just be more mindful about the way that you're communicating, what you're taking on, what you're misusing, and who it affects. And just in general, just be more considerate and mindful of other people and other cultures that you don't understand. Be curious, be open, be willing to change. Ask yourself honestly, what are you getting out of using this language? And is it worth the potential harm that you could be causing? And are you okay with that? Because you could be, and that's your choice. Also, just think about the way that your actions and your language would be perceived if you were Black. Would you face discrimination for speaking that way? Could you easily code switch into speaking proper standard English in a job interview? Also, just generally be yourself. I feel like a lot of this is people lacking their own identity and playing into these traditions that get them easy laughs so that they don't have to challenge themselves or really do the work of discovering who they are and what their identity is. And that does everyone a disservice, especially yourself.
Be yourself. It's all right. It's not that deep. Be yourself. You don't talk like that. You don't walk like that. You don't act like that. Come on. Be yourself.
You have your own unique charm and charisma that you could be tapping into, but instead you're relying on outdated practices and the mockery of marginalized people, and you don't have to, so don't do it. For more external things you can do, even if you're not Black, I saw somebody commenting saying that they don't feel like it's their place. If you do see somebody doing something that's wrong, even if it doesn't affect you, you still should say something. Even something as simple as Phineas calling out Billy for using that accent was like, you don't talk like that, like why are you talking like that? Respect to Phineas. I don't know anything about that man, but that was great. that was baller. Just check your friends. Why are you talking like this? Could really prompt a lot of self-reflection. It doesn't have to be confrontational at all. It could just be like, hey, like, is there a reason you're talking like this? And maybe they'll realize how inauthentic and ridiculous that they sound and stop doing it. Also, normalize accountability. It should be normal in your social circles to acknowledge making mistakes and then learn from them. So creating an environment where people can say, oh, I used to do that. I learned why it was bad and I stopped doing it. Could really normalize that this doesn't have to be a big deal. It doesn't have to be some cancellation. It could just be like, yeah, I was doing that and I was really misguided and I didn't understand. And now I stopped and you can too. And then also amplifying Black voices. If you're someone who finds yourself consuming a lot of creators that have Blaccents but aren't Black themselves, maybe try enjoying content from Black creators who do this naturally and aren't putting on a performance. That could also work. And then these are just some more general things. First, just continue to educate yourself. Like I said at the beginning of the video, my videos, any creator's videos, should not be where you stop unlearning certain behaviors or learning about certain topics. You should always be willing to engage with different materials. There's so many historians or writers that are doing amazing work that you could always be tapping into, and you should be. Also, if you've made it this far into the video, I'm sure some parts of this made you uncomfortable. I know a lot of people said in my Peak White Feminism video that they felt very uncomfortable, and that's how they realized that it was important for them to sit through. And I do try to be very direct and unfiltered in my approach. Well, I don't try that hard. It's just kind of my personality, to be honest with you. And sometimes I'm like, am I even being that unfiltered? I don't know. But realizing that sometimes when you are uncomfortable, it is important for your growth. That discomfort is you doing some self-reflection and thinking, hey, maybe this isn't right and maybe I could change and alleviate some of those feelings. So being uncomfortable is not always a sign to run and defend yourself immediately. And then I always try to say this, but remembering that it's about impact and not intention. I know that a lot of people genuinely did not know about this history, and most people still don't. But knowing that even though you don't know, you are still responsible for your own actions and how it impacts other people. So always remember impact over intent. When someone tells you that your actions are hurtful, just believe them, even if it wasn't your intent. I just want to end by saying that the path forward isn't about shame or guilt. It's about growth and respect. And I understand that the way I might have presented a lot of this information might have been a little direct and confrontational, but you have to understand that this is something that does harm people that look like me and even myself. So I am going to be emotional. I am going to be a little heated and not like I had some people saying like, oh, you're a little too extreme in the way you present this information and you're not gonna convince people that are on the fence. And I'm always like, I don't think it's my responsibility to gentle parent people that are desperate to be dense. I really just try to be a voice to the experiences and perspectives of people that are often overlooked and articulate feelings that are really hard to articulate because it is so painful for a lot of people. And that's really my goal with this. And I think I can also educate some people along the way. But again, my goal is never to gentle parent people that are desperate to be dense. That's not my end goal. The evolution from blackface to digital appropriation spans centuries, but the cycle can end with us if we're willing to make different choices. Sometimes the most radical act is simply to stop, take a act of respect, is to allow Black culture to belong to Black people. In 5 to 10 years, when we look back on the problematic nature of Blaccents and the appropriation of AAVE, how do you want to remember your impact on the issue? And that is all I have for you today, folks. This was probably my longest video. I'm anticipating it's like an hour, hopefully. I did try to put some humor in there, but again, this was a really hard video to make, and I can only imagine the editing is going to be much worse. So again, I mean, thank you for watching and sticking with me. This might be my last video for a month and a half because I am graduating college, y'all. I'm graduating and, you know, living my life. So I'm gonna be touching grass for a little bit. You might get to see some of it, I'll say that. But that's all I have for you today. Thank you again. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. As always, I can't wait to read your thoughts down below. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you. Bye.